My name is Elena Voss. I'm 36 years old. 3 weeks ago, a woman I hadn't seen in 8 years walked into the lobby of my architecture firm like she owned the building. The receptionist's desk, the waiting area chairs, the glass wall that separates our conference rooms from the corridor where clients pace before presentations. She walked in like she had designed every inch of it herself. She was wearing a cream-colored blazer I recognized from a magazine spread. The kind that costs more than my first car. The kind that doesn't wrinkle when you sit in it for 3 hours on a flight from Miami. She carried a leather portfolio under her arm, monogrammed with initials that used to be mine too. EV, Elena Voss, except now they stood for something else entirely. Evelyn Vance. She had married up, changed her name, and apparently decided that 8 years of silence was just a long pause before she could come back and claim what we had built together. She just wanted it back on her terms. But here's what Evelyn didn't know. Here's what she couldn't possibly have guessed during all those years she spent posting yacht photos and giving interviews about her entrepreneurial journey. I had been keeping a file of my own, not a portfolio, not a LinkedIn highlight reel. A box. A fireproof document box, gray, with a combination lock that I reset every 6 months out of habit. It sat on the top shelf of my closet, pushed behind winter coats I never wore because I had stopped feeling cold somewhere around year 3 of rebuilding everything she had tried to burn down. Inside that box were 31 items, 31 pieces of evidence that told the story she had spent 8 years trying to rewrite. Every bounced check, every forged signature, every anonymous threat that arrived in my mailbox when I was too exhausted to be afraid anymore. Every photograph of her living well while I was fighting to keep my architecture license, my sanity, and my belief that hard work actually meant something. She walked into my lobby with a proposal for partnership. I walked into that same lobby every morning knowing that in my closet, on the top shelf, behind coats I never wore, I had something better than a proposal. I had a case file. Before we go any further, if you're new here, if you just clicked on this video because the algorithm decided you needed to hear a story about betrayal and documentation and the long game of justice, take a moment to hit like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. And while you're at it, drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from and what you do for work. I read every single one. I read them on the train. I read them between meetings. I read them when I need to remember that there are people out there who understand that some stories take years to tell properly. Now, let me take you back. Let me take you back to the year I turned 26. The year my best friend became the reason I almost lost everything. The year I learned that the person who sits across from you at 2 in the morning, drinking terrible coffee and sketching buildings that don't exist yet, can become the person who tries to end your career before it really begins. Riverside, Illinois. Population 8,000. One train station where the platform smells like diesel and fallen leaves. One main street with a bakery that still hand-frosts cookies in the window every morning, the kind with rainbow sprinkles that stick to your fingers, and a hardware store where the owner remembers your father's name even if he hasn't seen you in 5 years. That was my town. My whole world until I was 22. My father, Robert, worked in commercial construction for 28 years. He built grocery stores with fluorescent lighting that hummed and office parks with parking lots that cracked in the winter, and one hospital wing that still has his initials carved into a beam in the basement, where only the maintenance workers ever see them. My mother, Linda, taught 3rd grade at Lincoln Elementary for 31 years. She knew every student's reading level by October and every parent's phone number by heart. She made me flashcards for my SATs, handwritten on index cards with different colored markers for math and verbal, and she packed my lunch until I graduated high school. Peanut butter and jelly, an apple, sometimes a note that just said, "I love you" in her cramped handwriting. I was their only child. I was supposed to be their proof that sacrifice compounds, that if you show up every day and do the work and don't complain, eventually the world notices. I wasn't the popular kid. I wasn't the pretty kid. I was the kid who stayed after class to ask the teacher extra questions about load distribution and tensile strength, even when the teacher was clearly ready to go home. I was the kid who organized her notebooks by color and subject before the first day of school, who labeled every divider with a label maker she bought with babysitting money. I was the kid who built a scale model of the Sears Tower out of balsa wood for the 8th grade science fair and won first place not because it looked the best, though it did look pretty good, but because I had calculated the load distribution on every floor. Because I could explain, in front of judges who looked bored, why the building wouldn't fall down if you removed the supports from the bottom 3 floors. My parents were proud of me in a quiet way. My father would nod at my report cards, a single sharp movement of his chin that I learned to read as high praise. My mother would frame my awards and hang them in the hallway, where the afternoon sun would hit the glass and make them glow. But they never threw me a party. They never made a big deal. They believed that praise made you soft. They believed that hard work was its own reward, that the satisfaction of a job well done was better than any trophy or certificate. I believed them. I believed them completely, without question, until I met someone who made me wonder if maybe, sometimes, you need someone to say out loud that you're doing something remarkable, that your work matters, that you matter. I met Evelyn Chen the first week of freshman year at the University of Michigan. We were assigned as roommates in South Quad, a building that smelled like old carpet and ambition, and the particular desperation of 18-year-olds who have just left home for the first time and are trying to figure out who they're supposed to be. I arrived first. I had a duffel bag with my clothes folded in Ziploc bags because my mother believed in organization even at the molecular level. I had a desk lamp. I had a poster of the Guggenheim Museum that I had been saving since I was 14. Evelyn arrived 3 hours later. She didn't knock. She walked in like the room had been waiting for her. She was from Greenwich, Connecticut. Her father ran a hedge fund that I would later learn managed more money than the GDP of some small countries. Her mother chaired 3 charity boards and had her name on a wing of the Met. She had a Tiffany bracelet for her 16th birthday and a vocabulary that made professors nod and lean forward in their chairs. I had a scholarship that covered tuition, but not books. A part-time job at the campus library, shelving books in the architecture section and reading them when my supervisor wasn't looking. A backpack with a broken zipper I kept meaning to replace, but never did because there was always something more important to spend $12 on. We shouldn't have been friends. On paper, we had nothing in common except a major and a room number. But Evelyn had something I needed, something I didn't even know I was missing until she showed it to me. She saw buildings the way I saw buildings, not as structures, not as collections of walls and floors and ceilings. She walked into a space and talked about light and shadow, about the way a ceiling could make you feel small or safe or infinite, about how a hallway could feel like a journey or a trap, depending on where you place the windows. I talked about load-bearing walls, structural integrity, the math of making something stand for 100 years through wind and rain and the slow erosion of time. She was the vision, I was the foundation, and for a while that felt like enough. We spent our sophomore year sketching buildings that didn't exist yet, buildings that curved like waves, buildings that grew out of the earth like they had always been there, buildings with courtyards where light fell in specific patterns at specific times of day. We stayed up until 3 a.m. in the architecture studio, drinking coffee that tasted like burnt rubber from a machine that no one had cleaned in months, arguing about whether Frank Lloyd Wright was a genius or a narcissist or both. She said genius. I said both. We were both right, but only one of us understood why that answer mattered. By junior year, we had a plan. Not a dream, not a wish. A plan. We would graduate. We would work for 2 years at established firms to get our licenses and learn the things that school couldn't teach you. How to talk to contractors who had been pouring concrete since before you were born. How to read a client's face when they said they loved something but their eyes said they hated it. How to file permits with city departments that seemed designed to make you give up. Then we would start our own practice. Voss and Chen Architecture. She would handle client relations and design concept, the part where you convince someone to spend millions of dollars on a vision they can't yet see. I would handle structural engineering, permits, and the numbers, the part where you make sure the vision doesn't collapse. Name order was alphabetical, but it was also honest. She came first in the alphabet and in the room. She was the one people remembered, the one who walked into a meeting and owned it before she said a word. I came first in the spreadsheets and the building codes. I was the one who made sure the beautiful things she imagined could actually exist in the real world, with gravity and wind loads and city inspectors who didn't care how pretty your rendering was if your stairwell was 3 inches too narrow. We were 21 years old, and we had already decided how we would spend our lives. We had already chosen each other. That was the part I didn't understand until much later. That choosing someone as a partner is not the same as them choosing you back. We graduated in 2012. The year the world felt like it was ending and beginning at the same time. I went to work for a mid-size firm in Chicago that designed schools with good light and community centers with wheelchair ramps that actually worked and public spaces that didn't feel like afterthoughts. Evelyn went to a boutique firm in Manhattan that did luxury residential for people who didn't look at price tags, who wanted their homes to feel like hotels and their hotels to feel like something out of a magazine spread. We talked every Sunday night. 7 p.m. my time, 8 p.m. hers. She would describe her clients' ridiculous demands: a closet the size of a studio apartment, a bathroom with gold fixtures that cost more than my car, a kitchen that no one would ever cook in. I would describe the city inspector who rejected our plans because the stairwell was 3 inches too narrow, the contractor who tried to substitute cheaper concrete and thought I wouldn't notice, the client who cried when she saw the final rendering of her community garden because it was exactly what she had imagined but never thought she could have. We laughed. We compared salaries, which was always awkward because hers was twice mine and she spent all of it while I saved half of mine. We counted down the months until we could start our firm. 12 months, 8 months, 6 months. We were going to do this. We were really going to do this. In 2014, we made it real. We both quit our jobs. I gave 2 weeks' notice and spent my last day organizing my files for the person who would replace me, leaving notes in the margins of every document like I was still responsible for what happened after I left. Evelyn sent an email and walked out. We pooled our savings. $47,000 between us, most of it mine. Evelyn's salary had gone to her Manhattan rent and her wardrobe and her social life, to dinners at restaurants where the menu didn't have prices, and to cabs because the subway was beneath her. Mine had gone to a high-yield savings account and a used Honda Civic that I bought from a man in Naperville who smoked cigars in the driver's seat and left burn marks in the upholstery. We signed a lease on a storefront in Wicker Park, Chicago, 800 square feet of exposed brick and water-stained ceiling tiles, and a bathroom that only worked if you jiggled the handle in a specific way that took me 3 weeks to learn. We bought 2 desks on Craigslist from a guy who was moving to Seattle and needed to get rid of everything by Friday. One desk had a coffee ring that never came out. The other had a drawer that stuck unless you lifted it while you pulled. We hung a shingle that said Voss and Chen Architecture in letters we bought at a hardware store and mounted ourselves, crooked, because neither of us had ever hung a sign before. We were 24 years old and we were terrified, and we were alive in a way that I have never been alive before or since. The first year was brutal and beautiful in equal measure. We lived on ramen and hope and the occasional pizza when we landed a client who paid their deposit on time. We bid on every project we could find. Small renovations for people who wanted to knock down a wall and didn't understand why they couldn't. A coffee shop remodel for a guy who had never owned a business before and thought industrial chic meant leaving the pipes exposed. A backyard studio for a freelance writer who wanted to feel like Thoreau but needed Wi-Fi. We lost most of them. We lost them to bigger firms with bigger portfolios and to cheaper firms with cheaper bids and to firms that had been around long enough that people had heard of them. We won enough to keep the lights on. Barely. Sometimes I would sit in our office at 11 at night, after Evelyn had gone home, and count the money in our business account like I was counting heartbeats. Evelyn was magic with clients. She could walk into a meeting with a couple who wanted to add a bathroom and walk out with a contract for a full home renovation, plus a guest house, plus a landscape design that she would subcontract to her college roommate. She could make people feel like they were building something historic, something that would outlast them, something that their grandchildren would fight over. I was magic with permits. I knew the Chicago building code better than some inspectors, better than the people who had written it. I could find a workaround for any zoning issue, any height restriction, any setback requirement. I could read a code book the way Evelyn read people, And together, for a while, we were unstoppable. By year 2, we had 6 employees. Kids right out of school who looked at us like we were something to aspire to. By year 3, we had 12. We moved to a real office in the West Loop, with windows that faced the street and a kitchenette with a coffee maker that someone else cleaned. We had a conference table that seated 8. We had health insurance that covered things I had been ignoring for years. We had a project portfolio that made people take meetings with us instead of the other way around. We had made it. We had actually made it. Then came the Marchetti project. A 14-unit condominium building in Lincoln Park. The biggest contract we had ever landed. $2.3 million in design fees. The kind of project that changes the trajectory of a firm. The kind of project that gets you written about in magazines. The kind of project that makes other developers call you. The developer, Anthony Marchetti, was a friend of Evelyn's father. She had grown up vacationing at his lake house in Wisconsin, the one with the boathouse and the dock, and the name carved into a stone at the entrance. She called him Uncle Tony. I called him Mr. Marchetti because I had never met him before the pitch meeting, and because I had learned that in business, familiarity is something you earn, not something you inherit. He shook my hand and said, "Evelyn tells me you are the one who actually makes the buildings stand up." I said, "That is the job." He laughed. Evelyn laughed. I should have noticed that they were laughing at different things. The Marchetti project started in March of 2016. We were 26 years old, and we were designing a building that would cost $18 million to construct. $18 million. I worked 70-hour weeks. I reviewed every structural calculation 3 times, not because I didn't trust my work, but because I didn't trust the stakes. I met with the general contractor every Tuesday at 6 in the morning, before the sun was fully up, in a trailer that smelled like coffee and diesel and men's cologne. I caught a mistake in the foundation plans that would have cost $400,000 to fix after construction started. A decimal point in the wrong place. A load calculation that was off by a factor of 10. The kind of mistake that doesn't happen if you're paying attention, and I was always paying attention. Evelyn handled the client. She took Marchetti to dinner at restaurants where the wine list was longer than some novels. She sent him renderings that looked like photographs, that showed light falling through windows in ways that made you want to live in a building that didn't exist yet. She made him feel like he was building something historic. Something that would define his legacy, something that would outlast the scandal that had followed his name in the 90s. She was good at that. She had always been good at that. In June, I noticed the first discrepancy. I was reviewing the monthly expense reports, which I did every Friday night after everyone else went home. I had started this habit in year 1 because Evelyn was terrible with receipts. She would lose them. She would forget to log them. She would charge a client dinner to the wrong project code and not notice until I pointed it out. I didn't mind. I was the numbers person. I liked the order of it. I liked the way the columns lined up. I liked the feeling of knowing exactly where every dollar went. But that Friday, I found a $12,000 payment to a vendor I didn't recognize. Meridian Design Consultants. The name sounded official. The name sounded like something that should exist. I searched our files. I searched our emails. I searched our contracts, every page of every agreement we had signed in the past 2 years. Nothing. No contract. No proposal. No mention of Meridian Design Consultants in any document, any meeting note, any casual conversation I could remember. I asked Evelyn about it on Monday morning. She was adding cream to her coffee, the expensive kind from the shop down the street, and she didn't look up. "Oh, that's a subconsultant Marchetti recommended for the interior finishes. I forgot to tell you." She said it like it was nothing. Like $12,000 was a rounding error. Like I was asking about the weather. I asked for the contract. I asked to see the scope of work. I asked for deliverables. She said she would get it to me. She never did. The next month, there was another payment. $18,000 to the same vendor. Then $9,000. Then $22,000. By September, I had found $87,000 in payments to Meridian Design Consultants with no contracts, no deliverables, no email correspondence, no evidence that this company existed outside of our accounting software. $87,000. More than I had saved in my first 2 years out of school. More than my parents' house was worth when they bought it. I confronted Evelyn in the conference room, the one with the glass wall that looked out over the street. I had printed everything. I had highlighted the deposits in yellow, the kind of yellow that screams for attention. I had made a spreadsheet with dates and amounts and missing contract numbers. I had prepared like I was going into a deposition. She sat across from me with her coffee going cold, and she said, "Elena, you are overreacting. Marchetti asked us to use them. It is a favor. It is how business works when you know people." I said, "We need a contract. We need deliverables. We need to be able to explain this to an auditor. We need to be able to explain this to ourselves." She said, "You are not my mother. You are my partner. Trust me." I wanted to trust her. I wanted to trust her more than I had wanted anything in my life. She was my best friend. She was the reason I had a firm instead of a job, a career instead of a cubicle. She was the person who had convinced me, in a studio at 3 a.m, that 2 women in their 20s could start an architecture practice and make it real, that we could be taken seriously, that we could build something that mattered. So I let it go. I filed the printouts in a folder labeled Meridian Follow-Up, and I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself that Evelyn knew people I didn't know, and that was why she handled the clients. I told myself that partners trust each other, even when the numbers don't make sense. Especially when the numbers don't make sense. In October, the state licensing board sent a letter. It was addressed to me personally. Elena Voss, license number IL Arch 201478432. The letter said they had received an anonymous complaint alleging that Voss and Chen Architecture had submitted falsified structural calculations for the Marchetti project. The complaint included copies of documents with my signature on them, documents I had never seen. Calculations that were wrong in ways that were subtle and dangerous, load capacities that were 10% too high, safety margins that were too thin, column spacing that didn't match the foundation plans. If these documents were real, the building we were designing could collapse, people could die, and my name would be on every page. I read the letter 3 times. The first time I didn't understand it. The second time I understood it but didn't believe it. The third time I believed it and felt my hands start to shake. Then I ran to the filing room and pulled every document for the Marchetti project. Every calculation, every revision, every email. I compared my originals to the copies in the complaint. The signatures looked like mine. The letterhead was ours. The formatting was identical. But the calculations were wrong. Someone had altered them. Someone had copied my signature onto documents that would have killed people if they had been built. I called Evelyn. She was at a client lunch. I left a voicemail that I know now was too calm, too controlled, too much like a business call and not enough like a scream. I called again. She texted back. "In a meeting, what is wrong?" I typed the words with fingers that felt numb. "State board complaint, falsified documents, my signature, call me now." She didn't call, she texted. "That is impossible. We will figure it out. Do not panic." I sat in the filing room with the documents spread across the floor like a crime scene, and I knew, in the way you know something before your mind has finished assembling the facts, before you have proof but you have certainty, that Evelyn was not surprised. Evelyn was not going to help. Evelyn was going to let me take the fall. The investigation took 14 months. 14 months of meetings with investigators who asked questions about engineering principles they didn't understand. 14 months of explaining my work to people who thought load-bearing walls were a metaphor. 14 months of wondering if I would lose my license, my firm, my career, everything I had built from nothing. I hired an attorney. I spent $34,000 on legal fees. I maxed out my credit cards. I stopped taking a salary. I lived on peanut butter and the hope that truth was a defense, that documentation mattered, that someone would eventually look at the evidence and see what I saw. During those 14 months, Evelyn became a ghost. She stopped coming to the office. She stopped answering my calls. She sent emails through her attorney, each one more carefully worded than the last. She claimed she was shocked by the complaint. She claimed she had no knowledge of any document irregularities. She claimed she was cooperating fully with the investigation. She did not cooperate with me. She did not look me in the eye and tell me what she knew. She disappeared into the safety of legal language, and I was left alone with the wreckage of a firm I had thought was mine. The forensic accountant found it. The state board hired him to review our financial records. He was a retired FBI agent named Harold Dunn. He had a mustache that looked like it required its own maintenance schedule and a voice that made you want to confess things you didn't do just to see if he would believe you. He called me in December of 2017. "Ms. Voss," he said, "I need to show you something." He laid out bank records on a table in a conference room that smelled like old coffee and authority and the particular desperation of people who have been waiting too long for answers. He showed me transfers from our business account to a personal account held by Evelyn Chen. $12,000, then $18,000, then $9,000, then $22,000, the same amounts, the same dates, the same vendor payments I had questioned. Meridian Design Consultants did not exist. The money went to Evelyn. She had forged my signature on the falsified structural documents. She had filed the anonymous complaint. She had tried to destroy me so she could take the Marchetti project and the firm and everything we had built together. I sat in that conference room and I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I opened the folder I had brought with me, the one labeled Meridian Follow-Up. I added the forensic accountant's report. I added the bank records. I added the anonymous complaint letter. I wrote on the folder in black marker in letters that were shaky but legible. Item 1, the beginning. The state board cleared me in February of 2018. Their letter said I had been the victim of a deliberate scheme to defraud and professional sabotage. They revoked Evelyn's license. They referred the case to the state's attorney for criminal charges, but Evelyn was gone. She had moved to Miami. She had started a new firm under a different name. She had taken $340,000 from our accounts and left me with $34,000 in legal debt and a reputation that needed rebuilding from the foundation up. I closed Voss and Chen Architecture. I couldn't bear the name. Every time I said it, I heard her voice saying it first. I started over. I called the new firm Voss Architecture. Just me. One desk, one computer, one phone that rang in an empty apartment. I worked out of my apartment for the first year. I took every job I could find. A garage conversion for a couple who wanted a home office. A kitchen remodel for a woman who cried when she saw the tile samples. A porch that needed to be brought up to code because the previous contractor had done everything wrong. I worked 80-hour weeks. I slept on a mattress on the floor because I couldn't afford a bed frame and because I was too tired to care. I didn't go on dates. I didn't take vacations. I didn't go to parties. I built something from nothing again because I didn't know how to stop and because stopping felt like letting her win. By year 3, I had 3 employees, people who believed in what we were building. By year 5, I had 12. By year 7, I had 28. We moved into a real office in the Fulton Market District with windows that faced west and caught the sunset. We had a portfolio of schools, libraries, and affordable housing projects. We had a reputation for buildings that were beautiful and safe and built to last. I was 34 years old and I was finally making money. Not Evelyn money. Not Marchetti money, but enough. Enough to breathe without calculating the cost of each breath. Enough to sleep through the night without waking up at 3 in the morning wondering if I had made a mistake in a calculation. Enough to look at a building I designed and feel proud instead of afraid. I kept the folder. I kept adding to it. Every time something reminded me of what she had done, I filed it. A newspaper article about her new firm in Miami, the one with the sleek website and the client list that read like a society page. A photograph from a design magazine showing her at a gala, wearing a dress that cost more than my monthly rent, smiling like she had never done anything wrong. A LinkedIn post about her award-winning projects. A screenshot of her Instagram where she posted about her entrepreneurial journey and her hustle and her self-made success. I printed them. I dated them. I filed them. The folder became a box. The box became a system. I was not obsessed. I was prepared. I was a woman who had learned that documentation is the only defense against people who can lie with a smile. In 2023, something strange happened. Evelyn started viewing my LinkedIn profile once a week, then twice, then 3 times in one day. She was using a private browser, but LinkedIn still showed the location. Miami, Florida. Then she started liking my posts, not commenting, just liking. A project announcement, a team photo, an article about affordable housing. Little digital footprints like she was testing the temperature of water before stepping in. Like she was trying to remember who I was. Like she was trying to see if I was still angry. Then a mutual acquaintance called me, Marcus Webb. He had worked with Evelyn at her Miami firm for 2 years before quitting. He said he had something to tell me. We met at a coffee shop near my office, the one with the exposed brick and the barista who knows my order. He looked nervous. He kept checking his phone. Evelyn's firm is failing, he said. She lost the Marchetti account 2 years ago. She has been borrowing money from her husband's family. She is looking for a way out. I asked why he was telling me this. He said, because she asked me to call you. She wants to reconnect. She wants to talk about old times. She wants to know if you would consider a partnership. Again. I sat with that information for 3 days. I didn't tell anyone. I went to work. I reviewed blueprints. I approved material samples. I acted normal. I smiled at clients. I signed checks. I went to meetings. But at night, I opened the box. I looked at the 31 items, the bounced checks, the forged signatures, the anonymous complaint, the forensic report, the bank records, the Instagram posts, the magazine articles. 8 years of evidence that Evelyn Chen had tried to destroy me and had been living well while I rebuilt from ashes. I called my attorney, not the one from the state board investigation, a new one, a woman named Patricia Okonkwo. She was 50 years old, Nigerian-American with a voice that made judges sit up straighter and opposing counsel start taking notes. I told her everything. I showed her the box. She asked one question. Do you want to press criminal charges? I said, not yet. I want to understand my options. She said, you have options. You have a lot of them. 2 weeks later, Evelyn emailed me. Not called, emailed. The subject line said, catching up. The body was 4 paragraphs of carefully constructed warmth. She mentioned fond memories of our early days. She mentioned respect for what I had built. She mentioned opportunities that might benefit both of us. She did not mention the $340,000. She did not mention the forged documents. She did not mention the 14-month investigation that nearly ended my career. She ended with a question. Would you be open to a conversation about the future? I didn't reply for 5 days. I wanted to see if she would follow up. I wanted to see how desperate she was. She did. A second email, more specific. She was interested in exploring a strategic partnership. She was impressed by Voss Architecture's growth. She was willing to invest capital and client relationships in exchange for a co-founder position and equity stake. She named a number. $500,000 investment for 40% of the firm. She wanted to buy back into the company she had tried to destroy. I forwarded the emails to Patricia. She called me that evening. Elena, this is not a partnership offer. This is a confession waiting to happen. She is desperate. Desperate people make mistakes. I asked what she recommended. She said, invite her to a meeting in your office with a witness. Let her make her pitch, record everything, then decide what justice looks like. I agreed to meet. I set the date for 3 weeks out. I wanted time to prepare. I wanted time to turn the box into a presentation. I wanted time to decide what I was going to say and how I was going to say it and whether I was going to say everything or just enough. During those 3 weeks, I did something I had never done before. I hired a forensic handwriting analyst. I sent him the anonymous complaint letter and a sample of Evelyn's signature from our old contracts. He called me 5 days later. Ms. Voss, the probability that these were written by the same person is 94%. The loop on the Y in Chen, the pressure on the C in Voss, the slant, the spacing. This is the same hand. I added his report to the box. Item 32. I also did something else. I reached out to Anthony Marchetti, the developer, the man who had called me the one who makes the buildings stand up. I had not spoken to him since the investigation. I had assumed he blamed me for the scandal. I had assumed he believed her. But I needed to know. I called his office. His assistant transferred me. He answered on the second ring. Elena Voss, I was wondering when I would hear from you. I told him about Evelyn's offer. I told him about the meeting. I asked if he would be willing to share what he knew. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, she came to me in 2019, after she moved to Miami. She wanted the Marchetti account. She told me you had been the one who falsified the documents. She told me she had tried to stop you. She told me she was the victim. I believed her. For 2 years, I believed her. Then my project manager found the original calculations. The real ones, the ones you signed. He compared them to the complaint documents. They were different. She had forged your signature on the fake ones. I fired her. I should have called you. I am sorry I did not. I added Marchetti's statement to the box. Item 33. I didn't cry. I had stopped crying about Evelyn Chen somewhere around year 4, but I felt something, a weight shifting. The truth was heavy, but it was finally on my side. The meeting was scheduled for a Thursday at 2 p.m. I chose the conference room, the one with the glass wall that looked out over the Chicago skyline, the one where I had confronted her about the Meridian payments 8 years ago. I wanted her to see how far I had come. I wanted her to see the buildings I had designed in the distance, the ones with my name on the permits. I wanted her to understand that she had not destroyed me, she had just delayed me. I asked Patricia to attend, not as my attorney, as a witness. I also asked Marcus Webb, the former employee who had warned me. I wanted Evelyn to see that her secrets were not secret anymore. I wanted her to feel the walls closing in before she even sat down. Evelyn arrived at 1:58. She was early. She had always been early. It was one of the things I used to admire about her. She walked into the conference room in a navy suit that probably cost $3,000. Her hair was different, shorter, blonder. She looked expensive. She looked nervous in a way that she was trying to hide. She looked at the skyline, at Patricia, at Marcus, and then at me. She smiled, the same smile she had used in client meetings. The smile that made people trust her before they knew her. "Elena, you look amazing. This office is incredible." I didn't smile back. I said, "Sit down." She sat. She placed her portfolio on the table, the same monogrammed leather, EV. She opened it. She had prepared a presentation. She had charts. She had projections. She had a list of strategic partnerships she could bring to the firm. She had a 5-year growth plan. She had a vision. I let her talk for 12 minutes. I counted. She did not mention the $340,000. She did not mention the forged documents. She did not mention the 14-month investigation. She did not mention that she had been living in Miami for 8 years while I rebuilt everything she had tried to burn down. She talked about synergy and leverage and scaling. She talked about our shared history and complementary strengths. She said, "We were always better together." When she finished, I stood up. I walked to the credenza where I had placed the box. The gray fireproof box with the combination lock. I carried it to the table. I set it down next to her portfolio. 2 containers. Hers, leather monogrammed, full of future plans. Mine, gray, locked, full of past truths. Evelyn looked at the box. "What is that?" I said. "You brought a proposal, I brought a record." I unlocked the box. I opened the lid. I pulled out the first item, a bank statement. I placed it on the table. Item 1, transfer from Voss and Chen Architecture to Evelyn Chen personal account. March 15, 2016. $12,000, labeled as payment to Meridian Design Consultants. No contract on file, no deliverables, no vendor. I pulled out the second item. Item 2, April 18, 2016. $18,000, same account, same label, same absence of documentation. I pulled out the third. Item 3, May 22, 2016. $9,000. I laid them out one by one. The way you lay out evidence in a deposition. No commentary, no emotion, just documents arranged in chronological order. Evelyn's smile disappeared. She looked at the bank records. She looked at me. She looked at Patricia. She looked at Marcus. "Elena, this is not what you think," I said. "I am not finished." I pulled out item 4, the anonymous complaint letter. Item 4, anonymous complaint to the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation. October 3, 2016. Alleging falsified structural calculations, including documents with my forged signature. I pulled out item 5. Item 5, forensic handwriting analysis, conducted 2024. Probability of same author, 94%. The Y in Chen, the S in Voss, your hand, Evelyn, your forgery. Marcus leaned forward. He had not known about the handwriting analysis. Patricia sat perfectly still. She had known. She had helped me prepare. Evelyn's face was pale. Her hands were flat on the table. "You had no right to investigate me." I looked at her, level, steady. "You had no right to forge my signature on documents that would have killed people if they had been built." The conference room went silent. I could hear the HVAC system humming. I could hear a siren 3 streets away. I could hear Evelyn breathing, shallow, fast, controlled panic. I reached for item 6, the forensic accountant's report. Item 6, State Board Investigation. Forensic review by Harold Dunn, retired FBI. Total embezzlement, $340,000. Method, fictitious vendor payments. Perpetrator, Evelyn Chen. Victim, Voss and Chen Architecture. Specifically, Elena Voss, who spent $34,000 on legal defense while you were in Miami. Evelyn stood up. The chair scraped against the floor. This is harassment. This is defamation. I will sue you. Patricia spoke for the first time. Her voice was calm and devastating. Ms. Chen, I am Ms. Voss's attorney. Everything on this table is admissible evidence. The statute of limitations on fraud in Illinois is 7 years from discovery. Ms. Voss discovered the full extent of your scheme in 2018. We are well within the window. Criminal charges can still be filed. Civil restitution can still be sought. You are not in a position to make threats. Evelyn sat back down, slowly, like the chair might not hold her. I pulled out the last item, not a document, a photograph. I printed it from her Instagram. It showed her on a yacht in Miami. Champagne glass. Sunset. Caption, self-made means never apologizing for your success. I placed it on the table. Item 33. August 14th, 2022. Your Instagram. While I was sleeping on a mattress on the floor, rebuilding a firm you tried to destroy, you were posting about being self-made. You were never self-made, Evelyn. You were made by theft. You were made by forgery. You were made by trying to end my career so you could take everything for yourself. Evelyn's eyes were wet, not with remorse, with fear. The same fear I had felt for 14 months while the state board investigated me. The same fear I had felt while I wondered if I would lose everything. She said, Elena, I was young, I was stupid, I was desperate. My father cut me off, I needed money. I never meant for you to get hurt. I thought the complaint would just slow things down. I thought you would clear your name and we would move on. I stared at her. I had waited 8 years for this moment. I had imagined it 1,000 times. I had imagined screaming. I had imagined crying. I had imagined the satisfaction of watching her squirm. But now that she was here, now that the evidence was on the table between us, I felt none of those things. I felt calm. I felt clear. I felt like I was reading a final number on a balance sheet. Factual, complete, no revision pending. I opened a folder I had brought separately, not from the box, from my desk. I pulled out a document, 2 pages. I placed it on the table. This is a partnership dissolution agreement, not the kind you proposed. This one dissolves any claim you have to me, to my firm, or to my future. It includes 3 conditions. 1. You sign a confession of fraud and forgery, admissible in court. 2. You agree to restitution of $340,000 plus $34,000 in legal fees, plus 8 years of interest at 6%, totaling $487,000. 3. You never contact me, my firm, or my employees again. Violation of any condition voids the agreement, and I file criminal charges immediately. Evelyn looked at the document. She looked at me. She looked at the box of evidence. She looked at Patricia. She looked at Marcus. She was searching for an ally. She was searching for a way out. She found neither. Marcus was looking at his phone. Patricia was looking at her watch. I was looking at her, waiting. She picked up a pen. She hesitated. She said, My husband. He does not know. He thinks I sold my share of the firm. He thinks I am a successful entrepreneur. If this gets out, if he finds out, I will lose everything. I said, You should have thought about that 8 years ago. You should have thought about that when you were forging my signature. You should have thought about that when you were posting about being self-made while I was rebuilding from nothing. You made your choices. These are the consequences. She signed. She initialed each page. She dated it. She pushed the document across the table. I picked it up. I did not feel victory. I felt closure. I felt the click of a door closing that had been open for 8 years. I felt the weight of the box finally lifting. Patricia stood up. She collected the documents. She said, Ms. Chen, my office will be in touch regarding the restitution payment schedule. I recommend you consult your own attorney. She walked out. Marcus followed. He did not look at Evelyn. He looked at me. He nodded. That was all. A nod, an acknowledgement that he had seen it, that he knew, that the truth was finally out. I stood up. I closed the box. I locked it. I looked at Evelyn one last time. She was staring at the table, at the bank records, at the handwriting analysis, at the Instagram photo, at the confession she had just signed. She looked smaller than she had when she walked in. The expensive suit did not fit her anymore. The monogrammed portfolio looked ridiculous. The smile was gone and it was not coming back. I said, "Evelyn, I want you to understand something. I did not do this for the money. I did not do this for revenge. I did this because for 8 years you told yourself a story about what happened. You told yourself I was paranoid. You told yourself I was jealous. You told yourself you were the victim. You told your husband you were self-made. You told your clients you were talented. You told the world you were successful. And every time you told that story, you erased the truth. I am not erasing you. I'm just making sure the truth exists somewhere you cannot rewrite it." I walked out of the conference room. I did not look back. I walked down the hall to my office. I set the box on my desk. I sat in my chair. I looked out the window at the Chicago skyline, at the buildings I had designed, at the life I had built, at the future that was finally completely mine. 2 weeks passed. Patricia called me on a Tuesday. The first restitution check had arrived, $40,000. The first of 12. Evelyn's husband had found out, not from me, from a business associate who had heard rumors. He had confronted her. She had confessed. He had filed for divorce. He had frozen their assets. The checks would be smaller now. They would take longer, but they would come. Patricia said, "You could have pressed charges. You could have put her in prison." I said, "I know." But I did not want her in prison. I wanted her to have to pay for what she took. I wanted her to have to explain to her husband why their money was going to me. I wanted her to have to look at the truth every month when she wrote that check. Prison would have been too easy. This is harder. This is forever. Marcus sent me a text. He had started his own firm, small, 3 people. He asked if I would be a reference. I said yes. I said yes without hesitation. That was new. That was a muscle I had not used in 8 years. Trust. Anthony Marchetti called me. He had a project, a community center in Bronzeville. He wanted Voss Architecture to design it. He said, "I owe you a building." I said, "You do not owe me anything, but I would love to design it." We met the next week. He brought his grandson. The boy drew pictures of skyscrapers while we talked about programming and budget and timeline. It was normal. It was beautiful. It was painfully normal. The box is still in my closet, on the top shelf. Behind the winter coats. I do not open it. I do not need to. The 33 items are not my burden anymore. They are my archive. They are my proof that I survived something that was designed to destroy me. They are my reminder that documentation is not obsession. It is preparation. It is the difference between being believed and being dismissed. Here is what 8 years taught me. Partnership is not a contract. It is not a signature on a piece of paper. Partnership is showing up when the permits are delayed and the client is screaming and the inspector found a problem you did not see. Partnership is trusting someone with your name, your reputation, your future, and knowing they will protect it like their own. Evelyn Chen was never my partner. She was my lesson. And I am grateful for the lesson, even though I would not wish the learning on anyone. If someone in your life tried to take credit for your work, tried to destroy your reputation, tried to erase your contributions, I need to hear your story. Drop it in the comments. And if this story reminded you that your work is your legacy and your documentation is your armor, share it with someone who needs that today. Hit subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.